In this video, I'm going to teach you how to open up a file in Revit and activate the Enscape rendering plugin, view the tools on the Enscape ribbon toolbar, download and apply material swatches to the walls, floors, and ceiling of an interior using Enscape, and see the real-time rendering of an interior space. Now, right now, to open this file, I've opened Revit, started the Revit program, and then I have gone to the open button and I have opened up this, which is the Revit file for Enscape. And this may look familiar to you, but this is actually the file that was created at the Revit class. And so it's the brownstone if you're not familiar with it. But you may have a copy of this file, but we're going to actually use the file that was created when the class was created, because we're hoping that that way it will have kind of the least amount of errors, and we'll all be starting from the same point. So what we're looking at here is, of course, the workspace perspective that was created. And it's got a few elements have been removed so that we can start to work with it in Enscape. And so what I want to do now is talk to you a little bit about the Enscape rendering plugin. Now, if you have downloaded and installed Enscape on your computer, the evidence of it will be shown right here once you open Revit, and you'll see the Enscape tab. Now, the first thing that you're going to want to do is hit this button right here, this start button. Now, I'm not going to hit mine because I've already done what I'm about to describe to you. And so you're going to have to kind of imagine with me this process. But the first time you hit this button, this is going to start up Enscape within Revit. And what you'll see when you hit this is a dialog box will appear in the middle of the screen, and it'll have three buttons on it. The one on the left will have a readout of how many days are left of your educational trial, and it should be 14 days or less. Now, if you have not done so already, what you need to do is activate your educational version of Revit so that you have it for 24 months. And so there'll be a button on the right side of that dialog box that says to input your activation or your licensing key. And so you're going to hit that button, the one on the far right, and you will see a dialog box that's going to allow you then to copy and paste the key that was sent by Enscape to your email. And once you copy that key and follow the prompts, it's going to then take care of the full-on installation of Enscape within your Revit file. And you really want to do that right away, because you don't have all the capabilities with the 14-day trial version that you're going to want to use for this exercise. So what you need to do now is go ahead and complete that process if you haven't done so already. And then once you've done that, then you can hit this button right here, and it's going to start to create the Enscape rendering. Now, the cool thing about Enscape is that it can do a real-time realistic rendering as you are building the rendering within Revit. And they're kind of working side by side. Now, if you have the ability to bring in a second monitor that you can look at while you are rendering, it's really cool to have Enscape rendering on one monitor and you operating Revit on the other. If not, that's totally fine. Those of us who've been using Revit for a really long time never had a rendering to look at while we were working. We always had to work on Revit and then export a rendering to see how it looked, and go back to work and make changes and then re-export it. So if you don't have that second monitor, don't worry about it, but just realize that my screen's going to get pretty crowded by having both the Enscape rendering on top of the Revit keystrokes. And so periodically you'll see me move mine to my other screen. And then when it becomes relevant for you to see that, I'll go ahead and bring it back over. So for right now, now that we kind of have a little bit of an understanding how Enscape ties into Revit, what I want to do now is just talk a little bit about the tools on the Enscape ribbon. So once you hit this tab right here, you'll see lots of different kind of components here that we've seen or that feel like the tabs in the rest of Revit. we're going to go ahead. We'll be using this button a lot, which is allows us to pause and restart the rendering capabilities within Enscape. We're going to use the asset library, which you could think about kind of where the Revit families are, or the Enscape families are, but they call them assets. We've got the Enscape materials library. The material editor, we're not really going to use all that much. And then we'll be using the general settings over here a little bit as well. But that's going to be our toolbar here, or our ribbon. You'll hear me call it both ways. And so once we've got that figured out, let's go ahead and move on to applying material swatches. We're going to apply material swatches to the walls, floors, and ceiling of this interior. And so again, we're going to be looking at our workspace perspective that is created in Revit for right now. And I've got it set to my visual settings for realistic. And so it's not looking all that exciting right now because we haven't added a whole lot to it. But let's go ahead to the Enscape materials library. We're going to download 3 materials. And so it's going to load, and you can see here it's got these kind of texture balls, which is a common way of representing materials within a rendering software. Now, there are these materials that, what we say, out of the box, or they come with Enscape, but you can download materials all over the internet. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but they're going to have the 3 components within the texture, which is going to be the texture itself, the color, and sort of the bump, or the what we call the sort of the roughness of the texture itself that gives it that 3D appearance. So we're going to download 3. We're going to download under wood. We'll download the chevron. I'm going to click on it and hit import selection here at the bottom. And I'm going to go to the miscellaneous folder. Sometimes it goes away, so I have to pick it up back over here. Let's go ahead and look at miscellaneous again, if it'll let us. Great. Okay, we're going to download the ceiling panel, so we'll click import selection. And we're going to, it's thinking, and then we're going to download cork. Okay, now these elements should be downloaded directly within our materials library. And so let's go ahead and look at manage materials over here. And we should see them. So there's cork. There's our ceiling panel, and then we'll see our wood chevron down here, I bet. Okay, now I'm going to make just a couple changes to the materials here really quickly. And that is, I would like to change some of the graphics and appearance just so that I know that they're applying correctly when I look at my Revit rendering. So when I apply this wood, I want to make sure that it doesn't show up as gray. I'm going to just assign it kind of this like a warm brown color, if I can get there. And that's going to look kind of start to mimic that color a little bit on this quick rendering here. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I change the surface pattern, just so that if I look at it on the design plan, I know that it's being applied. Now, notice the graphics and appearance tab. There's a difference, right? Graphics is how it looks in a quick rendering. Appearance is what it's going to look like in a more realistic rendering. See, you can see that roughness, or what we call bump, right there. You also, of course, can adjust all of the different effects of the material if you like, but I'm going to leave them just like that for right now. So I'm going to hit apply and OK. And then I'm going to go back to that materials tab, and I'm going to do the same thing for the cork and the ceiling. So the cork, again, I'm going to apply the color, and it's a little bit more of almost like a golden color. And again, I'm not trying necessarily to represent it exactly. I just like to do this to make sure that I can see that my rendering is applying and working as I want it to. Appearance, again, it's going to be more realistic. So I'm going to hit apply and OK. And then once more, I'm going to go to the ceiling treatment. You can rename these too if you want to. You just right click and hit rename. But again, I'm going to leave them as is for right now. This one's a real dark brown. So we'll go ahead and hit that. Okay. Pattern. This one's less important, but we can hit OK on that. In another class, you'll see how to take the settings that you used for Enscape and the items that you use and put in your project in Enscape and start to connect them back to your construction documents, and make sure that as we change finishes and appearances here, that it also renders correctly in plans and schedules and things like that. But for right now, we want to use Enscape for exactly what it's intended for, which is a beautiful, beautiful rendering. Okay, so we've got our materials downloaded and they're ready to apply. Now, keep in mind, the fun part of the design and what makes your particular projects unique is when you start to apply materials in a unique way by thinking back to your Revit knowledge and, you know, maybe using the split face tool to start to split up planes and maybe, you know, stripe materials or create panels within panels or inset elements. And that's all done within Revit, the way that you might remember how to do it. But the actual application of materials using Enscape is exactly the same as Revit, and it's very straightforward. So let's go ahead and start applying them. I'm going to click within this rendering, and that's going to activate my paint tool. And so I'm going to just go ahead and hit the paint button, and I'm going to do ceiling panels, and we'll put that on the ceiling. And see, I'll just hover and click, and there it is. And it should look kind of brown. Again, representing that graphic appearance here. And let's go ahead and pop the cork on this wall. If you can't grab your surface, just hit the tab button and it'll cycle through and you can grab it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is apply that chevron floor over here. Beautiful. Okay, so that is how you apply materials. And so let's go ahead now and take a look at the rendering. So I'm going to go over to my Enscape tab. I'm going to hit this pause live updates, and I want it to update my rendering. And you can see on my other screen, there's a little like a circle arrow in the lower left-hand corner that says it's updating. And now here is my rendering. Now, it looks a lot better on my other screen because my other screen has a higher resolution and doesn't have this kind of pixelating effect. But you can see, look at how beautiful it looks. Now, one thing that I learned while I was rendering here is sometimes you might render something, and if you have the wrong button checked, it will look like it's got this graphic appearance. So what I want to introduce you to just real quick here is the visual settings. Over here. So let's go ahead and, oh, wait, I think I've grabbed the wrong thing. Hold on a second. It's not in the visual settings here. We'll explore those later. But what I want to do is just introduce you to this one really important button. If you go to the general settings here and you click down on Revit, you want to make sure that it's set to appearance, not graphics. If it's set to graphics, it's Enscape will render the materials that you see over here, and I'll show you. It'll render it in this because that's the graphic appearance. So always make sure that you have the appearance tab checked. I was doing a rendering earlier and it had all this flat color and I didn't know why. And it took me a little bit to figure out, but that's why. So you've got this beautiful, beautiful rendering here that's starting to have nice realistic finishes. And now you know how to activate the Enscape rendering plugin. Look at the tools on that Enscape ribbon, apply material swatches, and see a real-time rendering. Now, if you make any changes to this rendering and you want to see it again, all you have to do is hit this button and it will re-render any changes that you have made, and then you'll see it on your Enscape rendering.